Hi everybody, it's Gasmask Reader again, back with yet another book review this week. This time I'm talking about a nonfiction book, specifically the Supergirls Revised and Updated Edition by Mike Madrid. Since I don't have a copy of the original unrevised and updated edition, I'm not entirely clear on exactly what all in this book has been revised and updated. I know for sure that since it talks about at some points the new Supergirl TV show that premiered last year, I guess, the Jessica Jones series on Netflix. Those were obviously not in the previous edition since they're too new, and it mentions the Batman versus Superman movie. So I know that must be new. Other than that, I'm not sure if the other one was. I remember it mentioning DC's New 52 series at some point. Well, not series, retcon or revamp or whatever the hell they call it. Yeah. I don't know if that was in the old one or not, since I don't know exactly when the old edition was published. That said, I'm off the track of what I wanted to talk about already. Now, the Supergirls is not all about Supergirl. It's all about female superheroes, specifically the history of female superheroes, and how their place in comic books and appearance and all that kind of stuff has changed over the decades. It starts off talking about the 1940s when the female superheroes were mostly vigilante types who were pretty good at kicking butt, but under the social mores of the times, were mostly interested in were just kicking butt so they could find themselves a man, really. And that really didn't change too much in the 50s either. Although, by that point, things had changed somewhat. There are obviously a few that weren't I don't know. I guess Wonder Woman? She was mentioned a lot, and her personality changed a lot over the years, according to that. I don't know. I have never read her comic books, actually. But, superheroes, female superheroes changed. In the 60s, it started moving towards slightly more equality with, superhero females who aren't just looking for a man. In the 70s, you got, feminism moving into the comics, and though that wasn't always presented in the best light. Then came the 80s with a darkety dark that you saw in the 80s. And the 90s was mostly apparently about big boobs and sex selling, and of course alternate covers to try and con people into buying multiple editions of a comic book on the vague basis that they were going to be valuable someday. And I sure regret falling for that back in the 90s, and I'm never going to make that mistake again. And basically, each decade gets its own chapter, which talks about it in depth, a lot more depth than I can, because I tend to forget exactly what all the details were and just babble. And besides chapters about the decades, there's also chapters about various individual female superheroes. Wonder Woman gets one, Supergirl gets one, I think Batwoman gets one, or maybe it was Batgirl, or maybe they both get one, I don't remember. Yes, and that's pretty much what the book is about. Female superheroes and their history. And I guess I will give you a little reading from it like I always do. Sandra Night steps out of the shadows. The world knows her as a Ford Society girl, a pampered senator's daughter with a glamorous wardrobe. But the outfit that Sandra is wearing didn't come from any couturier salon. The slinky blue costume is as skimpy as a swimsuit, and its fabric is as delicate as the finest French lingerie in Sandra's trousseau. Delicate, beaded chains just barely hold the low-cut neckline in place. The long red cape that Sandra fastens around her throat does little to cover her shapely form. What would her high society girlfriends think if they could see Sandra wearing this get-up in broad daylight? But this isn't Sandra hanging off of a fire escape in the silky blue costume. Now she is the Phantom Lady, enemy of criminals and evildoers. Phantom Lady is on the hunt for a racketeer who's targeting an innocent man for death. As the mob boss thugs drive off, she jumps on a nearby police motorcycle without thinking twice. It's an SOS, officer. Got to borrow your Go Devil for a while, but I'll return it to you, Phantom Lady says as she speeds off after the gangster's car. Phantom Lady's filmy costume offers her supple-fleshed little protection as she races after the getaway car at breakneck speed, dodging a hail of bullets. Decade chapter starts off with one of those little, I guess you'd call it a vignette, telling the story of one particular superheroes and female superheroes and encounter and action adventure and from one of her comics, I guess. And that sounds like total gibberish, but whatever. This book it's a pretty good book. I gotta say, I enjoyed it. It's a good book. It tells about comic history, especially a fairly neglected corner of it, because let's face it, most comic books are written for guys. And, most guys aren't all that interested in the history of female superheroes. Which is a problem. This also, of course, means that this book isn't going to be for everybody, because, let's face it, comic books are one of the areas where there is a fairly heavy dude bro influence. So there are going to be some guys who aren't going to like this at all because they don't like the idea of female superheroes being anything other than fat material for themselves. And that is actually one of the things they commented on in this a good bit, especially in the 90s when they were talking about Image Comics. It does spend a lot of time talking about the way superheroes, or female superheroes, whichever you want to call them, costumes changed over the years. Going from, modest to slutty to sensible to whatever. And that's also one of the big drawbacks, is that while it talks a good bit about costume changes, there's no real illustrations for any of it. The only ones that we get any illustrations from are the very earliest female superheroes from like the 40s. And even then, it's none of the big name ones. I assume mostly because either DC and Marvel didn't want to give permission to use their images, or they wanted too much money or something. But this book would really benefit from showing examples of how the costumes changes happen instead of just talking about them. Other than that, I thought it was a really fun read and certainly in a lot of interesting stuff. Definitely something I'd recommend. That's why I'll give it the 4 gas masks. Not quite perfect. It certainly could have done with more illustrations. And some of his claims I don't know if I completely agree with either, but definitely a good book. If you're interested in the history of comics, you should probably check it out. And that's all I've got to say this time. I will be back again soon with another review that will hopefully not involve me babbling like an idiot quite as badly as I did this time. Until then, keep on reading, and I'll try not to make an idiot of myself again. Goodbye.
If you like this video, please click subscribe or watch some of my older videos. If you think the book I reviewed sounds interesting, buy a copy. There are always links to the Amazon store in the description for this book and any other books I mentioned. If you have any suggestions on other books I could read, or any other comments, queries, insults, or anything else you want to say, please feel free to mention it in the comments section.